Hi there, I'm Jill Allen, and this is Find Your Fierce, the show designed for women to discover your fierce, unlock an unstoppable mindset, build unbreakable courage, and completely transform how you show up every single day. Each week, I will bring ideas, methods, and strategies that will inspire you to step into your greatness and live life on purpose. Let's be fit, fierce, and unstoppable. Hey there, gang. Welcome to Find Your Fierce. I'm Jill Allen, and I'm so excited that you are here with me as we dive into another amazing episode. We are going to talk about courage. And when it comes to courage, I truly believe it's never too late to start living a courageous life. And I'm going to be sharing a few stories of when we were in Moab this past week, moments of courage and steps to help you become a more courageous individual, because courage is simply... it's like another trait that can be developed with intentional effort and practice. And I can tell you, all the women on our latest retreat inspired me with their courage and their determination to recognize their fears and their willingness to choose to act in spite of them. And so today is going to be like total fire, because when you are able to identify your fears and take a proactive approach to work through them in order to achieve your goals, you're not only going to be able to build your self-confidence, but you're going to be able to be more successful overall. And so today, let's look at your fears as an opportunity to build your courage muscles, if you want to call them that. And before long, you're going to be able to push through that discomfort and live the kind of life that you have always wanted. And so if you want to grab a hold of a little more courage today and take action, today's episode is for you, and I'm so glad that you're here. But before we go any further, I have to ask, are you needing a speaker for an upcoming event or conference? If so, I am your person. I would love to bring the Find Your Fierce message to your next function. To book your event, message me at jill@jillallencoaching.com. And I love that you're here listening in and spending time with me. So honored that I get to be a part of your day. You're just also amazing, and I thank you for your love and support. I appreciate your feedback, your reviews, and I love that you share this podcast and the Set Fire message with your friends and family. And speaking of Set Fire, if you have not heard, or if you have not checked out the latest emails that have been sent to your inbox or the latest posts, my new book, Set Fire, is out for pre-order, and it officially launches on March 27th. And I know I'm fired up about it. So be sure to head on over to Amazon to snag your copy, especially if you want to fire up your life. And I cannot thank you enough. Just thanks so much for being here. And I appreciate every single one of you. So are you ready? I know I am. So let's dive in. Okay, so courage is something that everybody wants. You know, it's an attribute of good character that makes us worthy of respect, right? I mean, when we think of courage, that's what people tend to relate to. I mean, if you think from the Bible to fairy tales or ancient myths to Hollywood movies, our culture is loaded with story after story of courageous and heroic acts of bravery. You know, you got to remember the cowardly lion in The Wizard of Oz who finds the courage to face the witch, or David beating Goliath in the Bible. Yet courage is not just physical bravery. I mean, we can just take a look back into our history books and we see Martin, or think of Martin Luther King and Nelson Mandela, who chose to speak out against injustice at great personal risk. Think about Steve Jobs or Walt Disney, the entrepreneurs who took financial risks to follow their dreams and innovate. All of these individuals stepping out with courage. And if you're like most people, you probably equate courage with fearlessness. But that's not the case. I mean, that is a faulty interpretation. I mean, in fact, courage is taking action in spite of the fear you feel. Courage is the willingness to respond fearlessly despite the anxiety, the overwhelm, the unknown, all those doubts that might be tugging at us. And one of the best ways to be courageous is to understand what you're afraid of and then refuse to allow that fear to paralyze you. Because if we let fear, or if we let it, fear has that power to stop us from moving forward or from taking risks and making the most of the opportunities that have been given. And I don't know. I just think about being courageous. It allows us to take those chances or pursue our dreams and get what we want out of life, or better yet, to get on the path that God has placed us on. And I have to start off with sharing you this. A group of us has just spent 4 days in Moab. There were 16 women. It was absolutely epic. And we had our adventure out into the Canyonlands National Park. We went to Arches National Park. We even went over to the Dead Horse State Park, which is the #1 state park in Utah. So, of course, we had to go there and check it out. It's like this mini Grand Canyon. I mean, it was just so grand. It was so large. I mean, we definitely felt very small as we were out there during those days in Utah. I mean, I don't know about you, but I love, love, love the Red Rock. It's totally insane. It's definitely one of my happy places. But it took courage for many of us to even be on that journey, to even get there. And I think about it, I mean, like the courage to plan an event like that or to commit to such an adventure. I mean, for me, not knowing if anyone would even want to hike 30 plus miles and take on, that, 30-mile hiking mission in 3 days, or having the courage to lead the group of 16 women on this rocky terrain. The courage was required, from me. Courage was needed for women to join us. I mean, many of them were single travelers, not knowing anyone. I think of a gal that showed up, that joined us, and thank God that she did. I always feel that God places people in our lives and crosses paths for a reason and a purpose. This gal, I mean, her friend who introduced her to this trip, she unfortunately wasn't able to make it last minute. And she was like, I still want to go. I don't know anyone. I mean, we didn't even meet. We had not met at that point. And she's like, I need this. I'm turning 60. I am meant for adventure. I wanted to get outside, do something different. Is it okay if I'm alone? And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, yes. But the courage it took to show up and spend a weekend with individuals that you did not know in the same home, in the same house, taking on this adventure. It took a lot of courage, and I was just so inspired by that. I know another one showed courage because she doubted whether or not she could hang and complete the entire mission. The courage to hit the crazy trails or the different trails, the hard trails, courage to try something new, the courage to take on a new adventure and a new challenge, courage to leave their ordinary routine where they're away from their family and their kids and their responsibilities. Courage was needed quite often, not just in the Hike, Live, Explore mission, but in everyday life. There is probably something in your life right now that is requiring courage for you to take a step, for you to take action, for you to take a leap, even if there is a little bit of fear. I want you to just pause on that for a moment and just think about that situation in your life. Where are you being called to really grab hold of being courageous? If you've been struggling with fear and want to feel more courageous in your life, guys, there are a few ways that we can fire you up and fire up those courage muscles and make the most out of every situation. And I want to share with you a few perks of courage that you will get in tune with wanting to make sure that you are living a life filled with bravery. Being more courageous in your life, it will help you respond appropriately to risks and accomplish positive things in your life. But I got to tell you, it takes work to move beyond your fears. Being courageous is about thinking things through, examining the risks and rewards, and acting in spite of the fear that quite often sets in. And so I'm not encouraging you to do dumb stuff, okay? This is not what this episode is about. I just want us to be able to weigh our risks and go back and forth as to what that next step should be when it comes to stepping into that fear. And I have a story, and I'm still trying to decipher if it was a dumb moment or if it was an act of courage or not on my part. I know it was definitely a moment of faith. We were at Arches. We were in the Arches National Park, and one of the hikes, we should have known right there, it was called Devil's Garden. It was one of the most challenging and most difficult 8-mile hikes that was within that national park. And we said, we're going to do it. And there were a couple options. You could either go out, it's kind of like a popsicle stick, if you think about it, when it comes to the trail. And we decided to turn left when we got to that T. And We went through like the landscape arch. We went to the double O arch. We went out to Dark Angel monument that was out there. And when we got back to that turnaround point, which was like 4 miles, we were halfway through. There was a sign. We can either take the route that we came in on, or we could complete the entire circle taking a primitive route, a difficult, a challenging route. And now we were up for challenges. We knew that the trails were going to be difficult. And so we're like, no, we're doing this loop. And so as we were kind of going through and weaving our way around, there we got to a point where like maybe the trail ended, and then all we saw were these massive like slides, where meaning it was rock, and we had to slide down them to get to, and you could just see exactly where the trail would pick back up. And I think there were like 3 or 4 of these. And I was thinking, thank goodness, if we had gone the other way, we would have had to have been climbing and scaling up these slides. It was much easier, although a little bit scary at sometimes, sliding down these like almost out of control. But it was fun. We did it. We helped each other out, and it was absolutely amazing. And so we ran into this couple. I'll make this story. I know I give a lot of details, but we ran into this couple. They were an older couple, and their daughter was probably in their mid-20s or early 30s. And the 3 of them were coming against us. They were coming in the opposite way. So they were actually scaling these rocks. And one of them said, should we tell them about like this next one that they're going to like face? And the mom was like, no, don't say anything. I'm like, oh gosh, there's more challenges coming up. And so we continued on. I don't know, it was about maybe 50 feet. And there was a group, I'd say of about 20 people, 15 of them being kids, 14, 15 of them being kids, 4, 5, 6 adults, okay? And when we came up on them, they were taking it very, very slow. And obviously they weren't prepared. They didn't have hiking shoes on. They had tennis shoes. They had those, I don't know, what do you call them? Hey dudes. They had hey dudes on. They had Vans on. They had their school shoes on. So they were definitely not prepared. But when we got up to that, I'm telling you, I'm not exaggerating. It was like a 30-foot drop, okay, with a very, very small, on an angle, 45-degree path that you would have to actually balance your way on, going across, I don't know, maybe 40, 50 feet before you get back down to the trail. This was not something that you could just slide down. You literally had to walk sideways on a 45-degree angle on a sandy red rock. And if you slipped, obviously you would be falling at least 20 feet to 30 right down that slide. And it was the first time there were women on the trail that looked at me and was like, okay, Jill, this was the first time that I ever saw like some sort of fear come over your eyes and your face. Because usually I'm just like, nope, we're doing this. We got this. We can do it. We have each other. There's a way. And I remember standing there assessing the situation, okay, weighing the risks. And it was one of those things where I was like, okay, I have a group that I am responsible for, and we've already hiked 6 miles. Do we turn around, hike 6 miles back, scale the rocks that we just slid down? Because this was not in the trail description, guys. This was not in there. They said it was primitive. They said it was challenging. They said there was some scrambles, but they didn't mention anything about scaling a 45-degree angle rock 20 feet. And if you slip and fall, you'd be falling 20 to 30 feet. So I stood there and I was just watching them. I was watching the group in front of us, their every move, how they did it, weighing the situation and weighing our risks, and whether or not we should A, turn around, or B, plow through this and hike the final 2 miles. And I tell you what, I was speechless. I didn't know what to say. I was looking at their faces. I could just see the fear come across everybody's face at that moment. And I tell you what, I humbled myself. I put my pride aside, and I looked at the guy, the dad that was helping all these individuals come across, because he had a good footing. Like, he was set up to where he could help them get across, scramble across, like as their, I don't know, as their banister, I guess, or as their, I don't know what you want to call it, but he was just helping them. Let me put it that way. So I asked him, I go, can you please stay? Can you please stay and help us get across? And he said yes. And so I went across and trying to not think about it, just step, step, step. Because sometimes the more we think about things, the more that we overcomplicate it, and it's more detrimental. And so I took 1, 2, 3 steps to him, grabbed his hand, weaseled around him, got to the other side, found some good footing, and I watched every single individual slide down, grab a hold of him, weasel around him, grab my hand, and then work their way down for the remaining 10, 15, 20 feet. Let me tell you, when we were done, and I'm sorry, this is a long story and it's long-winded, but just stick with me because I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about courage and how you can put this in your life and start implementing some courageous acts within your day. But when we were finished, we were all able to breathe. We were able to exhale. I remember giving it, like, we were crying, we were laughing, we were giving each other hugs. I mean, this was something that I knew that each and every one of us, we had a little bit of fear. We had a fear in our heart. We had a fear in our mind. We were just really thinking about this. And it took courage, a whole lot of faith too, but it took courage for us to take that step forward and not turn back. Because what I was thinking about was like, okay, if these kids could do it, if we've got these guys to help us, and we've called them our angels. I forgot to even tell you this part. We missed a turn. Okay. Yeah, guys, no problem. I am the best hiking guide ever. But yes, we missed a turn. And we ended up back on the same trail that we were, and we missed a little outcropping, I should say. And I tell you what, if the old Jill would have been like, no, we are hiking all of this. We're going to find this route. We're not going to give up. We're going to walk every single inch of it. And I just got to the point where I was like, you know what, guys, let's just continue on the trail. If we continued to hike and try to find that little jut out, we would have missed these guys by 15 minutes. And we would have not had any help. So I tell you what, God does miraculous things. Just go with his flow, get there. And I tell you what, we called them our two angels there to help us during this time. So that's kind of a story. Now, some will say that it was a dumb move, but I know that those women stepped up with courage and we did it. We did it together. And all I know is that we can do hard things. So I'm fired up, when it comes to that story, and just so inspired. But because what courage gives you, it gives us the power to chase after things that are important to us and what God has placed in our heart. Okay, there's so many benefits for, just leading a courageous life. Our self-confidence skyrockets. It allows us to believe in our abilities. I mean, that is exactly what happened on that hike. Now, I mean, I get it. It's important that you realize that courage is not the absence of fear. And I know we had a little fear going in on that moment, but feeling fearful is healthy because it causes us to slow down and evaluate those risks properly. And I don't ever want you to beat yourself up or assume that you're not courageous if you feel fearful at any given moment. I mean, to be courageous means that you are able to act in spite of feeling fearful. And the more we are able to face our fears, the more we will replace our fear-based response with a courageous one. We're flipping the script here today. I think about all the other bonuses and perks of being courageous. I mean, being courageous in the midst of fear, and I get it. It builds self-confidence, but embracing courage also allows us to see the world from a different perspective. And when we make it a part of our life, it equips us with the ability to empower others to do the same, to inspire others to take a step out, with their faith. And, even if they feel fearful, and choosing to step out of our comfort zone, I got to tell you, it broadens the experiences we have in our life. I mean, it makes us a successful person. I mean, however you define success or however you define that. For me, I try, and I tell you, I oftentimes fall short, but I try to define success by God's standards and his definition of it. And so all I know is that we're more likely to pursue our dreams and seize the opportunities as the Lord presents them and places them on our path when we become more courageous. So we got to ask, how can we feel more courageous? Well, being fearful is definitely a powerful force that can lead us to stagnation. If fear is not viewed correctly, it can definitely prevent us from achieving our goals and pursuing those amazing opportunities. And unfortunately, so many people allow fear to keep them stuck in their comfort zone rather than, flexing their courage muscles and getting fired up to try something new in spite of the risks. If you find this scenario sounding an awful lot like your life, I encourage you to kind of delve a little deeper and determine the areas in your life where you could be a little bit more courageous. Do you need to go after that promotion at work rather than just hoping they notice your hard work? Or do you feel like you should speak up the next time the office bully is putting someone down, or that little dream inside of you, or to start a new business, to write a book, to start a nonprofit, or if it takes courage to let go of the past, or to reach out to someone that maybe you haven't talked to in a while, or to restore a tense relationship with a friend or family member? What is requiring you to have courage right now? And I get it. There are probably countless areas in your life where you can be a little bit more courageous. And I know that you can flip that script today. So, how can we be more courageous? Well, one, maintain a healthy perspective. Too many times, people assume that we're either born courageous or we're not. And while it's true that some people could be more predisposed to displaying courage, that doesn't mean that it all is lost for you. And in fact, it's best to view courage as a muscle. Okay, being a fitness and mindset coach, I think of everything as a muscle, because some people might be born with more defined muscles than others, but yet everybody has the ability to improve their muscles and to train their muscles, or in this instance, it's their courage muscles with the right training and practice. And it's important to recognize that fear is not a bad thing. In fact, in some ways, fear is really, really healthy. Fear triggers our nervous system and our survival instincts that are designed to keep us safe. And because of this reason, you might feel fearful when approached by a stranger in a dark alley, or you might feel fearful during a tornado, or you might feel fearful when you're standing on a 45-degree slant on sandy red rock with a 30-foot drop. So I totally get that. But instead of assuming that being fearful is a bad thing that stops us in our tracks, look at it as an opportunity to learn more about who you are and why you might be afraid or less than thrilled about stepping out of your comfort zone. You might find that if you take the time to name your fear and understand why it's there, that you can uncover a better idea of how to overcome it or to be courageous in spite of it. So I encourage you to voice your fears. It does not make you weak. Instead, it actually makes you brave. And I get it. It's not easy to acknowledge where you are vulnerable. And so if you're able to acknowledge your fears, guys, I got to tell you, you're one step closer to being courageous. So let's not minimize our fear or deny that it exists. Recognize what is holding us back. But by acknowledging our fear, by either writing it down or by sharing it with like a really good friend, you are actually empowering yourself to be courageous in spite of feeling fearful. 2, identify your strengths. When it comes to living a life filled with courage, it helps to begin by identifying what you're really good at, as well as where you have been successful. So knowing what you're good at, it helps boost your confidence, which makes it more likely that you're going to take some risks and be courageous. And when you're confident in your abilities, you're much more willing to go all in when an opportunity presents itself. And on the flip side, when you're struggling with fear and want to incorporate more courage in your life, it's natural to focus on your shortcomings and your weaknesses. But you're not going to want to feel courageous after that. Who gets fired up focusing on their weaknesses? So it's important to think about what you're good at as a way of building your confidence and your courage, and for you to be able to take that next step. Number 3, examine the different scenarios. When it comes to being courageous, it's a good thing not to imagine not only the worst thing that could happen if you take a risk, but also what would happen if you didn't act at all. Many times when we compare the two extremes, it's all we need to move beyond our fears, because most of the time the worst thing that could happen is often small in comparison to what we could gain by acting. So it's the one time that I would say comparison is a good thing, because it builds that immunity to letting our fears control us over time. Have you ever created scenarios where you envision yourself doing something that you're afraid of? My high school basketball coach, he was telling me about this. Sometimes people were afraid to shoot. Probably told me this and had nothing to do with anything about being fearful, but I want to stress the importance of, or the power of, visualization. Okay. So it's not exactly the same thing, but I'm probably going down a rabbit hole and I probably shouldn't even be going through this, but I want to share it with you. The mind is a powerful thing, right? And so he shared the example of, there was a team that practiced basketball without the ball, right? Shooting, doing all the drills, visualizing everything. There was a basketball team that actually practiced with the ball. And then, of course, there was a team that didn't practice at all. Now, the team that didn't practice at all, they did not get better. The team that practiced with the ball, yep, they improved. But guess what? The team that practiced without the ball, they actually had the biggest results, the biggest transformation, because they had to visualize every single thing going in, everything that was happening. They had to visualize the ball being passed from player to player. They had to visualize, the ball rolling off their fingers, arcing, getting in and up and over the hoop. I mean, visualization is such a powerful thing. So if we can visualize us doing something that we're afraid of in a very positive way, right? Putting yourself out there, if we can envision being courageous without having to put ourselves in the midst of it, we could do that until we're ready, and then we can move forward. Okay, so that's just might be something that you can add into when you're kind of weighing those different scenarios. 4, practice leaving your comfort zone. This one is a biggie, guys. Expand your horizons. Let go of the familiar. Our life shrinks or expands in proportion to our courage. I mean, when you let fear keep you from doing something fun or going after something that you want or expressing who you are at your core, it can result in a life that is not truly lived. And if you want to change that aspect of your life, it's going to take being intentional about your life. And back to building those courage muscles, it requires us that we push ourselves to step outside of our comfort zone and choosing some of those scenarios that make us uncomfortable and go do those things. Maybe it's overcoming little fears like meeting new people or eating alone in a restaurant, or before you tackle something like taking the lead on a project or heading up your community's toy drive, whatever that may be. By starting small, we can get used to being courageous without a lot of risks at first, but eventually builds that confidence for you to be able to get to the point where you can take bigger risks. 5, reduce your stress. It's probably a big one for me too, okay? Sometimes people experience fear or feel like they lack courage simply because we're exhausted and the thought of doing anything more just seems too overwhelming. I mean, this is me all the way. I mean, if I find that I'm feeling overwhelmed, frazzled, if I'm bogged down, it's really hard for me to feel courageous when I'm stressed out. So I try to find ways to unwind or decompress in healthy ways, of course, but I try to reduce that stress so I can function at a high level. 6, celebrate courageous actions. Guys, I'm all about the wins. Celebrate your wins. Every courageous act, especially if living courageously is something new for you. I mean, don't fail to acknowledge the times when you acted with courage despite feeling fearful. Okay, pat yourself on the back and recognize the effort it takes to overcome the fear every now and then. Keep a journal if you need to keep track of things. 7, here's a big one. Welcome failure. Most people are afraid of failure, which keeps them stagnant or stuck in the same place. The fear of failure can lead us to develop like these rigid standards, and we end up being perfectionists or trying to make everything perfect in an effort not to experience like embarrassment or rejection or shame that comes with it. But failure, guys, it is an experience that we need to actually embrace. Remind ourselves that failure is not a bad thing, especially if we take those risks or stepped outside of our comfort zone, because it is an opportunity for us to grow as a person. It allows us to learn something new, for us to change directions, for us to pivot and see what we're really made of. And if we view failure as a welcome experience instead of a worst case scenario, guys, it stretches us to try new things in spite of the risks and the fear involved. Okay, I know I was probably talking a mile a minute. I think I was talking fast. I can feel my heart rate like pumping. But I want to end with a few quotes that I absolutely love, and I want to challenge you today, something that you can actually rock out right when we hop off here. Okay, so if you're feeling fear, yet choosing, not to act, okay, Nelson Mandela says it best. I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. Pierce Anthony, he says, being terrified but going ahead and doing what must be done, that's courage. The one who feels no fear is a fool, and the one who lets fear rule him is a coward. Guys, and I love quotes. I can go on all day with these because I write them down and I read them over and over again, especially the ones I love. Oliver Wendell Holmes, he says, courage is about doing what you're afraid to do. There can be no courage unless you're scared. Have the courage to act instead of react. Friend, just follow your heart and what God has placed in it. Allow his love and his passion for you lead the way, because passion is the heart of courage. It's what drives us crazy. It's what makes us do extraordinary things, to discover, to challenge ourselves, to innovate, to persevere in the face of adversity, to stand up for what is right, to let go of the familiar. It's courage. Courage is not always loud. Sometimes that courage is that little voice at the end of the day that says, good job. I'll try again tomorrow. Way to try. Way to show up. I hope you guys are fired up, ready to take on a challenge, a new adventure, to try something new, something that fear has been holding you back from. And so here's a quick courage building exercise that I know that you can do today. Okay, so for what you need, you'll need like a notebook, a pen, just get in a quiet, uninterrupted space in where you can reflect. And I want us to go back to that first definition of courage, feeling afraid, yet choosing to act. That's what courage is, feeling afraid, yet choosing to act. Okay, so answer these questions. And I want you to think of a situation as an adult when you felt afraid, yet chose to face your fear. And ask yourself these questions. What did you observe? What did you think? How did you feel at the time? For example, I saw the ledge. I looked back on the ladies' faces and I felt paralyzed. What did the people around you say or think and do to help you face your fear? And for me, I told myself that if the little kids could go on it, so could we. At what point did that fear start to go down? And how did you feel afterwards? Now, I want you to do the exact same thing and thinking back on a situation in childhood in which you faced your fear. And how was that the same or the different from the first situation? And now we're bringing it back to the present. Think of a situation that you are currently facing right now that creates fear or anxiety or overwhelm. And ask yourself, what are you most afraid of? Is it being fired if you ask your boss for a raise? Is it afraid of putting your life out there if you write a book? Afraid of failure, rejection, fear of the unknown? Whatever it may be, take that current situation, that current fear, okay? And what are you most afraid of? And if you can go back and apply the same skills that you used in the two earlier situations, if you can go back and use the same skills that you used when you faced the fear as an adult, when you faced the fear as when you were a child, and go back and apply that to your current situation, remind yourself that you have these skills, guys. You already have them, and you have used them before successfully in the past. God has equipped you, and He is giving you the strength, and He is giving the courage that you need right here, right now, in this moment. I hope you're fired up. Be sure to let me know how you were courageous today. I want to hear all about it. Before we wrap this up, there's something about getting outdoors, unplugging, and spending time in nature. I hope you have had a chance to check out our brand new Instagram page, Hike, Live, Explore. And if you want all the ins and outs when it comes to hiking, getting outdoors, and the upcoming challenges, go follow that page, Hike, Live, Explore. There's also a Facebook group that you can hang out with us, and that's same thing, Hike, Live, Explore. There is a hiking challenge kicking off May 1st. You don't want to miss it. And if you're wanting even more fire in your day, there's so much for you to do. So you can join our Just Breathe Facebook group, follow my personal Instagram to keep up to date with all the things that is going on. Guys, my new book, Set Fire, is set to release March 27th, but yet you can pre-order now, and I gotta tell you, it's so good. Join us in the Fit and Fierce Sisterhood, the upcoming retreats, hiking adventures, or join our Hawaii mission trip team as we will be serving in Kauai in June. Or if you're wanting to do your own road trip, you can hop in our Sprinter van that sleeps up to 5 and hit the open road. Guys, that is a lot going on. I don't want to overwhelm you because I'm like sharing that with you and I'm like, whoa, I had to take a breather. So just go to jillallencoaching.com for all updates, as we would love to connect with you. Positive connection is so game changing. Come back next week as we will talk about whatever God has placed on my heart that day. I have no game plan, but all I know is you're going to love it, as it will help encourage you to up level. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I pray that I filled your heart with joy. If you could let me know before hopping off, that would be incredible. Subscribe, share this episode link on your social media if you felt encouraged or inspired, as we all know someone that can benefit, and I would love it if you would give some feedback and a review as well. Talk with you next time. Be fit, be fierce, be unstoppable. See ya.